So this is the second in a series of about 10-minute talks on the Buddha. So at the end of the first talk, we had seen the Buddha assimilating the immensity of what had happened, what he discovered, the immensity of his enlightenment. And then we saw his mind turning slowly back to the world and him setting off to walk 150 miles across the plains of northern India from near the river Uruvela and the place of the Enlightenment to the deer park at Sarnath, just outside Varanasi, on the great river Ganges, where the 5 ascetics who had been his followers and companions on the path were now staying. And so he wanted to share what had happened, what he'd discovered with them. So he set out, and before going very far, he met another wanderer on the road called Upaka. There must have been a radiance, something remarkable about the Buddha, despite his ragged garments and the dust of a journey on India's roads. Upaka came and spoke with the Buddha, commenting on the brightness and clarity of his skin, of the serenity of his bearing. And he wanted to know who was his teacher, what path was he following. And in inspired words, the Buddha declared he had no teacher. He'd discovered the freedom and awakening for himself and told of them. Upaka was taken aback. But if what you say is true, you must be a universal victor. Again, in an inspired declaration, the Buddha said he was indeed victorious over all the taints or defilements. This was all a bit too much for Upaka. He shook his head and said, "May it be so, friend." And we're told he went off, took a side track and left. So the Buddha continued his journey in stages and eventually came to the deer park at Sarnath. The 5 wanderers, ascetics, saw him in the distance, recognized him. Here comes Gautama, who became self-indulgent, who gave up the struggle, who went back to a life of luxury. We're not going to show him any respect. He can come and sit with us if he wants to, but no respect. But when he came close, there was something about him that just dissolved their resolve. One got up and took his bowl and outer robe. Another folded a cloth for him to sit on. Another fetched water for him to drink, and another a bowl of water for him to wash his feet. But they addressed him still as friend, as an equal. The Buddha told them this wasn't appropriate. He'd achieved the supreme goal. He'd done all there was to be done. If they were ready to hear his teaching, they could discover the same truth awakening for themselves. How's that possible, they said, if even with your ardent practice when you were together with us, you didn't achieve the goal? How can you have achieved it now when you've returned to a life of luxury? Again, the Buddha confidently asserted he had achieved the highest goal. It took a while for the ascetics, for these companions to really be convinced. Have you ever heard me speak like this before? No. No, we haven't, they agreed. And eventually they were convinced. They were ready to open their hearts and listen. So they sat together, absorbed soon in earnest discussion. sometimes silent, reflecting, sometimes the Buddha trying to communicate who he was, what he discovered, using old words to open up the way, open up something completely new. There was a sense of urgency, a sense of possibility alive between them. 3 of them would go off to beg food in turn for all of them, whilst the others just continued their discussions. Eventually, the vision of the truth arose in one of them, and the Buddha declared, Kondanya knows, Kondanya knows. The wisdom and compassion of the Buddha had been communicated and shared, and this is seen as a momentous occasion by the Buddhist tradition, the setting in motion of the wheel of the Dharma that flows on down to us even today. One by one, the others also awoke to the truth. The Buddha was seeking to communicate, and there were now 6 enlightened beings in the world. Soon afterwards, we find the Buddha walking up and down, meditating through the night in the woods near the deer park. He saw someone coming towards him exclaiming, "It's fearful, it's horrible." He sat down and waited for them to come closer. Yasa was the son of a rich merchant, a bit of a playboy. He'd been partying that night with his friends. At some point he'd fallen asleep. He'd woken up. A night lamp was still burning, and he looked around him. His friends, the dancing girls, earlier also handsome, so attractive, so beautiful, were now sprawled around, their clothes dishevelled. They were snoring, dribbling, grunting. And the emptiness, the superficiality of the life he was leading struck him like a thunderbolt. And in a state of shock, he ran out of the house, ran out of the city, and stumbled into the woods, exclaiming, "It's fearful, it's horrible." When he came close, the Buddha said, "This is not fearful. This is not horrible. Come, sit with me. Let me teach you." There was something deeply reassuring in these words, in the wanderer sitting beneath a tree in those woods. Yasa sat down and joined him, and soon they were deep in discussion and communication. And in time, we're told, when the Buddha saw that Yasa's mind was ready, receptive, free from hindrance, trusting, he opened up for him, for Yasa, the vision of the Buddhas and the spotless, pure vision of Dhamma, of the truth of things, opened up in Yasa's mind. And as Yasa sat and assimilated what had happened, he realised that he had to leave his former life behind. He had to become a monk, a disciple of the Buddha, to go forth. So Yasa was very popular. He had a lot of friends. And when word began to get round what had happened, people couldn't believe it. "No way, you must be joking. Yasa, a monk? Never." People were very curious. Many of these friends came to check out the Buddha. Themselves were won over. It was as if something was flowing through the Buddha. A momentum, a tremendous momentum flowing from his enlightenment that others were drawn into, so that they too woke up to a sense of a far deeper meaning in their life. And many also gave up their former lives, became monks, disciples, homeless wanderers, sharing in the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. And soon there were 61 awakened beings in the world. So the Buddha gathered them all together. You're now all free of all shackles. Go now, he said, and wander for the happiness and welfare of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, happiness and welfare of gods and men. Share the truth teachings that are good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Explain to people how to live a life that is completely free and pure. There are those with but little dust on their eyes. Without these teachings, they will be lost. Some will understand. And he sent them off in every direction, and he himself set out again, embarking on a life of wandering and teaching that was to span 45 years until his death as an old man of 80.